Good evening, everyone, and a special welcome and thank you for joining us for this evening's new members orientation presentation. I'm Stan Schulman and will be leading the meeting this evening. I would like to thank all those presenting tonight for making themselves available, either by attending in the club or on Zoom. History is being made tonight as we conduct this meeting in hybrid format, as it has become well known. The new members orientation is held in September and again in January each year, and it provides an important opportunity for us to meet, greet, and get to know each other personally. Since our presenters are in different locations, we are going to rely on the skills of Mike Fellhauer, our audio-visual technologist, to work his magic as seamless as possible. If you lose contact with us, just try logging in again. This club has so many activities that it is impossible to get into any details about any of the activities. So we have asked the presenters to simply provide an overview of their topic. The details will come with time, exploring the website, talking to members, attending meetings, or asking your buddy. Kathy Moore and Christopher Sue have a lot to cover, even just doing an overview, and they are allotted additional times. Kathy Moore is our first presenter this evening. She has been a member for 9 years. She is a board director and communications chair and a multi-award winning photographer. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, Stanley, since you introduced me, I feel like I don't have to say anything else. Okay, so I think the biggest role that I play with the club is the newsletter. And with the newsletter, that goes out once a week. And it goes out to all our members, plus anybody else who has signed up to receive our newsletter. And I also send out newsletters for the salon and for our public presentation. Yeah, there's a lot that goes in them, and I hope everybody appreciates them. I think one of the things as a new member is that if you are not receiving the emails, to please get in touch. And the email is right there on this page. Right down where it says club newsletters, and it says news@torontocamera-club.com. And then I can help guide you through how to make sure that you get the newsletter. Because I know some email systems can be really picky as far as what domains they accept. But in general, most people don't have any problems. The other thing that I also do is I do help out with our private Facebook group, the members and alumni of the Toronto Camera Club. And basically my role is if you have put in a request to join our group, I will check my list to make sure you're on my list, and then you will be accepted into our group. Let's see, what else do I do? I do have my fingers in on a little bit with the website as far as updating the calendar. There's a section there on upcoming events, and I do help out with keeping that up to date. And I can't think of anything else right now. But if you have questions, if you're on Zoom, you can put them in the chat. And hopefully for those of you who are at the club, that you can ask those questions later. Okay,
Thank you, Kathy.
well, you're welcome.
I'm going to be the next presenter. And I'm going to tell you about, membership tags. Membership tags, which are unfortunately not ready to be handed out yet. I'm wearing one, so you can see this one here. However, I'm wearing mine, but it is a vintage pre-COVID one. And I'm hanging on to it as I'm hoping it will become a collector's piece one day. If you have paid your membership, you will get a tag with your name and below it, the year you joined. This is very helpful for new members as they start to meet other members. They can see how long members have been with the club and if they perform any specific function for the club. It is a great icebreaker to start a conversation. I understand these tags should be available by next meeting. Now, you will notice that these tags have got different colors. And this one has got red on it because it's pre-COVID. I was on the board for 5 years and have now stepped down. So my new tag will have some other color on it. I'm not quite sure. But the blue tag identifies new members. The orange tags are worn by life and honorary members. Red tags denote board members. The turquoise tags denote other official volunteer roles and have the specific positions listed on each tag. The buddies have a large circular buddy pin, making them easy to spot. The next presenter is Christopher Sue. And he has a lot to cover. He has been a member for 28 years. He's also a past president and presently a board director, as well as nature chair for competitions and out-of-town outings leader, and a life member who has won every award possible. Welcome, Christopher.
Okay, thank you very much, Stanley. I want to extend a personal welcome to all the new members that are attending this orientation meeting tonight, whether at the club or at home. I have met with some of you on Monday, so I hope that you will be fitted in and feel comfortable in the club very quickly. So I'm going to rely on Stan to advance the slide to the next slide, which covers competitions.
I'm just trying to make eyes at Mike because it will not advance. So,
okay. I am speaking on behalf of our competition chair, Dora Albach, who is out of town at this moment. Yep, that's coming on. So this covers, okay, so I'm covering club activities. So you've already been aware that we have a weekly meeting on Monday. We also have a lot of lectures, workshops, generally on Thursdays. Fairly new this year, we have image evaluation meetings on Wednesdays. There's a lot to cover. And also on this slide, inspiration nights are on Mondays during the regular weekly meetings. And on weekends, we have outings, sometimes outing just locally arranged, or an extended weekend trip, which is what I will be covering later. And it's the weekend outing this year to Killarney, which is going to happen next weekend. There are also inter-club events. A lot of these events rotate are competition oriented. So under competition on the left side of your screen, you see a list of competitions. Competitions in Camera Club has a long-standing tradition. Our club has all kinds of categories. I'm going to briefly go over them without too much detail because the details can be found on the website. If you look under our website and under competition rules, I suppose, it will cover all the different types of competitions that we have. So I'll just go down the list very briefly because there's a few special conditions. So pictorial competition just essentially encompasses all kind of picture, including color, monochrome, The only stipulation is that the pictures have to be realistic looking and that there should be no animals that would otherwise qualify as a nature image. The second item is creative altered reality. And so as the name implies, this type of images are not recognizable as real. It has to look obviously altered. So just a slight bit of decoloration or using a simple, maybe a filter is not enough to qualify for this category. You may be able to see some samples later. Print competition, this used to be a big type of competition as well. But for now, because of COVID and because of the inability to have judges coming to look at the prints, we are not going to hold print competitions until hopefully by the spring, so the next half of the season. Assigned topic competitions are special every year. I think we will talk about the topics. Oh, yes, so there it is. So we do, it changes every year and the topics are basically selected by members. So this year, these are the topics. Minimalist, macro, I think these two will be the topic for the first competition. Abstracts and night photography will be the topic for the second competition. And discarded lost objects, turrets and spires will be the third competition. They have a slightly different number of entries, which you can go over later in the website. The next item is nature. Nature competition is the competition that I chair. And particular to nature competition is that there are 3 subcategories, which is botany, zoology, and general. So when you enter nature competitions, you do have to specify your entry being either a botany image, zoology image, or general image. We'll show some samples of those later on. The audio-visual presentation is essentially a slideshow, the traditional slideshow. Of course, it doesn't look like a traditional slideshow anymore. A little bit of video is allowed in these slideshows. And the condition is also stated in the website. We may be able to show a sample, or I'm not sure whether we will tonight. But these are long. These are about I would say on the average, about a 5-minute slideshow, audio-visual show. So it will be a combination of images, still images, or video, probably put to music or narration, or a combination of all of the above. The topic is wide open. You can be, so the subject can be wide open. You can present whatever you wish. And it's judged on various aspects. So again, details will be in the website. The last 2, the International Salon and the Interclub, are these big competitions. The first list of competitions are all within our own club. So we're competing among our own members. The International Salon is a very prestigious international competition. It is conducted by a lot of camera clubs all over the world. Maybe over 100 of them. And a lot of very keen photographers will be competing in this forum. And we have been holding such an international salon for the past 128 years. Lily, am I right? 128, I think. So it's one of the most long-standing international competition there is. Winning an award there would be very prestigious. And we usually conduct this competition in November. The result is presented in January. I think Lily will go over that later in her segment. The other competition is in the club. So as it implies, we compete against other clubs. Generally, there is one interclub competition for the GTA area or for Ontario in the spring. So it won't be held until probably May of 23. We also compete Canada-wide among other camera clubs across Canada. They have individual competitions for individual members, or we can compete as a club under nature, pictorial, creative, or under some special topics. Again, very interesting because sometimes just opening your eyes and looking at other photographers from either internationally or across Canada will be very educational as well. Very interesting competitions. We have some informal competitions. I think, I'm not sure what these refer to, but I will talk about the evaluation meeting. So judging nights are no longer held, unfortunately. In the pre-COVID days, we would have the judging of these competitions, our club competitions, judging, and the international salon competition will be judged in the club premise. But with COVID, we are mostly doing this online unless there's a change in the near future. So we've talked about lectures and presentations. They're generally held on Thursdays. I think the first lecture will be starting in October. Cherie will go over that in her segment. Workshops are also on Thursdays. So if there's no lecture, there'll be a workshop. I think there is a workshop next Thursday already. And again, check the calendar. For both lectures and workshops, all the new members or everybody should be aware whether the presenters will be in person or whether they are presenting on Zoom. If it is on Zoom, obviously the club premise may be closed. I was told that from Monday, there are some lecture presenters who are, although they are presenting on Zoom, there are some members are interested to attend in person and listen on to the presentation in the club, just like as you are sitting there in the club and watching the screen. So I think some of the lectures will be, the club premise will be open for the lectures. But for workshops, you should check whether there's a live presenter or whether it's just a Zoom presentation. Evaluation meetings, I will go over that later in more detail. These are informal evaluations. So as opposed to having a very pressure-filled competition for beginners or inexperienced photographers, you can just have your images evaluated. The next item I'm going to go over is how our competition breaks down. Again, I'll be going into that in more detail later. But essentially, we have 3 divisions for which you categorize yourself as a photographer. You can either call yourself a beginner, an advanced, or master's level. Usually, most members will start in the beginner's level just to test the waters. If you start winning awards in competitions, then after a certain number of awards, in this case, 5, I think, then you will move on. Yes, so if you look at the bottom chart, if you win 10, actually, if you win 10 points as a beginner, then you will be promoted to advanced. After that, if you win another 25 points as an advanced member, then you go to the master's level. It's fun to start from the beginning and work your way up because you may find sometimes that the competition is a little tougher than you expect. If you are really good and you win a lot of top and runner-up awards within the first few competitions, you may be promoted immediately. These are samples of the nature pictures. The picture on the left is the double rainbow is a sample of a general image. It shows a landscape, although it has trees, it has rocks, but the feature of it is showing the landscape and showing the habitat. So that's considered a general image. The bristle grass is a botany image. Generally, botany is generally speaking a macro image. It shows the detail of a plant or a flower for that matter. And for zoology, any birds, animals, insects are considered in the zoology section. So when you enter nature competition, you have to identify which category your image belongs to, which is different from the other competitions, which does not have a category or subcategory. Pictorial images, some samples here, some of the winning images from last year. It just shows that it's wide open. The topic is wide open. It actually includes monochrome images as well. It can be manipulated to a certain extent. In other words, you can change certain things, move certain things around in your image, as long as the final image looks like a real picture. It has to be identifiable as a realistic looking image. Otherwise, you have to enter them into the altered reality or creative category, which we can see a sample of next, I believe, once Mike advances the screen. Yes, so creative, as you can see, Kathy Moore, whom you just listened to, is a master of creating a story, a composite of the scene, Dust in the Wind, image by Cherie. You can see it's obviously a fantasy image, an extremely abstract image. This one may be just created by camera movement. It's considered creative. This year, new this year, we do have a special competition for in-camera altered reality. So deliberate camera, in-camera movement, or multiple exposure, as opposed to using Photoshop or post-processing. This is a test of your technique to be able to reproduce that in your camera. Now, the next image, which appears as a black screen right now, can you see? Oh, there we are. Can we have the next slide? Okay, great. So prints, it doesn't really apply anymore for this year so far. Prints literally means that you have to produce your work in such a way that we can present it. So your print can be printed commercially. You can print it at home, but it has to be mounted on a board that allows your image to be handled. So you cannot just hand in the sheet of print without any backing. So minimally, you need a backing. You can even be more elaborate and make a, not framing it, but with a matte board to outline the border. There are some consideration by judges to see a well-presented image, but the topic for prints is wide open as well. Now, this will include, it can be altered reality, it can be nature, it can be anything. So in prints, there's no categorization of topics or anything like that. Is there any other? Okay, so this is talking about the assigned topic. These sample images are from last year. So your entry has to be topic specific. If it is a night photography competition or topic, then obviously your images have to fit that topic in order for it to qualify for the competition. So every year the assigned topics are different. I have already outlined them. If you don't forget, or if you've forgotten what they are, check on our website. It is listed there, and the first assigned topic competition will come up later in November, I believe. So the evaluation group is something that I chair as well. I want to let all the new members know that I highly encourage all of you to submit to this evaluation. They are completely informal, and the main thing is they are completely anonymous as well. So I do know who the makers are, because you do have to send the images to me, but the evaluators, the panelists that would make comments on your image will not know and your name or the maker is not announced. So there's completely no pressure, no need to feel embarrassed or anything. I think getting an objective evaluation or comment on your image is very helpful, especially for those who are not sure how to improve upon those images. And the suggestions for improvement can be incorporated by the maker later. And these images can still, if you wish, you can still enter them into competition. Although we will not sort of hold your hands and tell you how to change them, but we will make suggestions pointing out the weaknesses or the strength of your image. So you can take it from that point and improve upon them. The first evaluation meeting is next Wednesday. So it's not on a Monday, not on a Thursday, it's on a Wednesday. It's on Zoom. And the first one is on pictorial. So the topic is, again, open, including monochrome. The only stipulation is that it has to look realistic. And also it should not contain an image that may otherwise qualify for nature. So namely a wild animal or bird. You can show images of domestic animals or cultivated plants, but if it is something that qualifies for nature, then it has to go in the nature competition. I want also everybody to be aware that to submit images, it's not on the website. You have to send them directly to me. I will again put my email address on the newsletter, but in case you can jot this down, it's very easy to remember. It's christopher.sue@torontocameraclub.com. So you have to send those images directly to me. I will sort them out and distribute them to the evaluators we already have a panel of 3 members, and they will look over your images and give you comments next Wednesday. So this is for pictorial only. The week after that, the following Wednesday, we'll be doing nature images. And the Wednesday after that is creative images. All these meetings, the evaluations, are on the Wednesday just preceding the entry deadline for that particular topic. So the first pictorial competition entry is the Monday after, which I can't tell what date is that the 23rd or something like that. So it's the Wednesday after, I mean, it's a Monday after next Wednesday. So that will give you some time to make some changes if you wish and enter those images into the competition. Okay, that's about the evaluation group. Is there any more slides that I need to?
No, that's done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Lily Markovich, a member for 16 years. She is a board director and the Toronto International Salon of Photography chair for the past 10 years. We are celebrating the 129th consecutive year, and it is an enormous undertaking. Shortly after completing one salon, Lily already starts preparing for the next year. She is also an award-winning photographer. Welcome, Lily.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. From my home. It's already, a lot of things have been said about salon and about all other activities that are run by this club. So I don't want to bother you with so many details that I have in my mind, but I'll do something called workshop on September 22nd with all the details about salon and with all your questions eventually. So I will say just a few words now. As you heard, it's been run by this club for 129 years. And as of this year, I think, as the information I got, I'm not sure that it's quite 100% true, but we are the oldest one in the world, which is fantastic success. I don't know if we're going to stay that way because the economic crisis is all around the world. So hopefully, with all of your help, we will stay on top this year too. As it says, International Salon is a prestigious competition, and it's we have 6 sections there, and judging after that in November. And we have a panel of 18 judges, not only 3, 3 judges for each section. And it's a huge undertaking. It's a huge job that it lasts for the whole year for us. Before COVID, we did have judging and social meetings 3 days in a row in November, with judges and over 30 volunteers. When COVID struck, we stopped using the club facility, and we do it online only still this year. For the next year, hopefully we will go back to our club in full, and then we will have again 3 days social meetings and judging, and it's a specific event really, and it's totally different than our club competitions. So I don't want to bother you anymore with talking about it. You are welcome to visit my workshop on September 22nd. It will be on Zoom too, and then we'll talk in details, and you can ask me anything. Yes, by the way, in the meantime, if you want to see more about the salon, you go on our web page, Toronto Camera Club web page. You will see at the blue banner salon. Click on salon. It says down there, enter there. You enter, and then you can search, and you can search through archive to see what kind of images are coming, and what is this all about practically. That's the thing you can do before we do a workshop on September 22nd. That's all for me for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lily.
You're welcome.
The next presentation is by Dermot O'Carroll, but I'm going to speak on his behalf as he is busy traveling at the moment. And I'm going to just follow here. Dermot has been with the club for 10 years and is the workshop coordinator and also an award-winning photographer. Workshops present an opportunity for members to share their knowledge and skills that they have developed in various aspects of photography. We are looking for additional presenters for this year's program. We currently have commitment for 5 workshops, and one is a new approach. Nikon Canada has offered to participate and will present a session on street photography that proves to be very interesting. This year's program includes sessions on using photofills that I've not been familiar with, but it's an interesting app that helps planning and shooting celestial images involving the sun, moon, and Milky Way. There is also one on layers and layer masking in Photoshop and Lightroom, geometric transformations in Photoshop, examples, scaling, rotation, mirroring, distortion of images and image elements. All sounds terrific, particularly for new members who may not have ever been involved with any of this. So this is an opportunity to attend these workshops and to learn something about it. This is a way to improve your photography, a review of the principles behind photography and street photography. That's everything that you will find in our workshops. Our next presenter is Colleen Pollock. And Colleen joined the club a year and a half ago and has already taken on the responsibility of local outings leader with a number of awards under her belt already. Welcome, Colleen. Are you muted, Colleen? I think we'll have to move on while Colleen is busy organizing herself, if she's there. Okay, the next presenter will be Cherie Jetta. Cherie is to talk about the lecture series. Cherie has been a member for 2 years and in a very short period volunteered to be a chair for the lecture series and has done an excellent job along with co-chair Lawrence Bernstein. Cherie is a multi-talented artist and has also won numerous awards for her excellent and creative photography. Welcome, Cherie.
I know she's here.
I'm muted. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Stan, for that warm introduction. So the lecture series is one of TCC's longest running programs through the year. And we are very proud to have Henry's Canada's Greatest Camera Store as the exclusive sponsor for the 6th year in a row. Like last year, we've had a lineup of 13 speakers that are equally distributed over 12 sessions, starting in the fall and continuing in the spring. And it all starts in October 20th exactly. The speakers are experts in their specialized genre of photography, and they will share beautiful imagery, tell interesting tales, provide tips and share their technique during their presentations. So each session is 2 hours long from 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. every Thursday during this timeline, and that's inclusive of 30-minute Q&A. We try to provide for a wide array of interests of our club members. And this year, our lineup includes time-lapsing, abstract architecture, travel, bird nature photography, just to mention a few. Usually we run a survey straight after the speaker's presentation, and it's not compulsory to complete it, but it's greatly valuable if you choose to do so. This information helps Lawrence and I put together next year's lineup, and it also lets us know what your preferences are so we can improve to serve you better. In keeping with the hybrid operations of the club, all Thursday meetings, whether the speaker is virtual or not, you may attend at the clubhouse or enjoy them over Zoom. So both options are available every time. The lecture series is included in your membership. So we hope you take full advantage of that experience, which we bring to you with delight. Important to mention is it is a public event, so everyone is welcome. The box office will open soon and tickets are available for $10 per session for non-members. If you have selected the guest privilege membership, your guest is still required to obtain a ticket, but they are welcome to other TCC club events at no cost. And as an added bonus to your membership, a recording of each session is available in the member section of the website, and it runs for 2 weeks should you wish to review them. The updates and reminders are placed weekly in the club newsletter. And at the beginning of each club meeting when the season starts, as always, you may reach out to Lawrence or myself with questions or concerns or just to say hi. Please accept my heartfelt welcome to the club. And remember, what you get out of the club is how little or how much you take from it. From its enriched program and by association with the many, many talented, knowledgeable and experienced TCC photographers, you will soon feel like family almost. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you very much, Sherry.
Welcome.
Our next presenter is Frank Ibbott. Frank has been a member for 17 years and is responsible for the darkroom and is an award-winning photographer. Half his time is spent at a second home in BC, where he has his own darkroom and also does alternative process photography, that is, using ancient emulsions such as platinum and gum biochromates, which are exposed under ultraviolet light. Several years ago, he displayed these prints in our own Powell gallery upstairs and has also participated in contact gallery exhibitions at the Lonsdale Gallery here in Toronto. Welcome, Frank. For sure.
Let me add my welcome to all the others. And both to those here who, if you're interested in the darkroom, you can see it during our tour a little later. For those of you who are here on Zoom, we do plan to have a couple of called open house so you can actually see it. It's a bit of a challenge because of COVID. It's a small space. We don't want to have 20 people in there. And because of COVID, we've actually been shut down for 1.5 years. But we used that time well in that we refurbished the darkroom. If you've been in it before, you won't recognize it again because it's totally painted. We have a new sink, we have a new floor, we have new lighting, and it's really marvelous. Some of you may wonder, a darkroom. Do people still do film? Yes, there's a small core group. We don't do it because it's better. It's not. We do it because it's something we want to do. You know, why do people do watercolors or acrylics? It's a craft, and you enjoy it. To be in the darkroom and see the magic of a print coming up is really quite amazing. We only do black and white as part of the regular program. Some members choose to do color, which you can, but it involves different chemicals. So we have workshops. I'm hoping to have about 5 workshops this club year. The first one is actually scheduled for this weekend. It's a 2-day workshop, Saturday and Sunday. On Saturday, you develop film, which you come to the workshop with a roll of film exposed. You develop it on Saturday. On Sunday, you do the printing. A lot of members say, well, gee, I want to try that. I've never done it. I've always heard about it. So we welcome you for the opportunity of coming to try it. It's not just for hardcore people who want to do film on an ongoing basis. It's an amenity that the club offers its members. It's not, there's a nominal $35 cost for the materials which we charge. So if you're interested, send me an email and we'll try to book you into one of the workshops. We do have another workshop actually scheduled for the weekend of October 1st and 2nd. That's after this week. We've got a couple of spots available for that yet. What have I not covered off? I think that's pretty well it. So I look forward to seeing you if you're here. I'm going to be downstairs in the dark room a little later, and I can show it to you then. And for those of you who are on Zoom, as I said, we're going to have some open houses after club meetings. If you're interested, you can come and take a peek at the dark room then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. I'm the next presenter on the Buddy program. I've been a member for 11 years, and I'm the Buddy program chair. I've just completed 5 years on the board, after which I had to step down for 2 years before I become eligible again. This rule ensures a constant movement of fresh eyes with fresh ideas. At our club, we recommend allocating a buddy for any new member so that you will have at least one member who can be contacted by email or phone should you have a question or concern. Having a buddy at the club can make a huge difference to the speed at which new members start to feel comfortable and begin to participate and enjoy the activities of the club. Just knowing there is someone there to listen who is genuinely interested in helping you can make new members feel they joined the right club. Soon enough, you will meet other members, even on Zoom, and form friendships with them as well. No need to feel intimidated here, as all our members are approachable and will be happy to chat with you. In fact, we are all buddies. The more you attend meetings, whether by Zoom or in the club, and the more times you enter the various activities, the more you get to know other members, and the more they get to know you. This is when you really get to feel the benefits of membership. Once you join the club, I will send you an email explaining the Buddy program and requesting you complete a short survey noting your photography experience, what your photography interests are, and what equipment you use. The survey will indicate whether you have an interest in using the darkroom, whether you need help using your camera, or if you have a photography website, Instagram, or Facebook account, and wish to have them added to our club website, so your images can be viewed by other members. The quickest way to get answers is to contact your buddy. The next presenter is Nora Jancic, who has been a member for 17 years. Nora is our president and board member and leads the new member committee. She is also on the nominating committee and an award-winning photographer. Welcome, Nora.
Hey, thank you, Stan. So in terms of the new member committee, One thing that we do that I'd like to mention is we have one of our members at the front or back, whatever you call it, when you come in at a table. And when you come in, we're there to answer any questions you have. If you'd like to be put in touch with a particular person like Frank in the dark room or whatever, just ask the person at the table and they'll steer you in the right direction. We're not giving out programs this year. Program is on the website, but we're also not changing it if there's changes made. So the changes will be made on the calendar. So always the most up-to-date is the calendar that you can check on our website in case we make any changes. We're also not giving out the new member booklet, but you can find that on the website. You just go to members, club documents, and it's sitting right there for you to take a look at. Okay, Kathy talked about the newsletter. That is so valuable just to figure out what's going on for the next week or two. So do take a good look at the newsletter when it comes in your email. Here's a tip. If you want to park on Mount Pleasant, I don't know if you know this, because of all the construction on Eglinton, you can get 2 hours free parking. Just use the parking app and put in the code crosstown, and you can get 2 hours free parking if you can find a place. Hey, I'm also involved with the nominating committee, which is basically about volunteers. Most people, when they see me coming, run because they know I'm going to be asking them to do something. Often new members want to wait a little while before they get involved, see what things are about. But some new members want to get involved right away. So if you'd like to volunteer for something, I have jobs for you. So just come and talk to me. Okay. Mike, can I see the people in the audience? Could you turn a light on for me? Yeah. So we're going to have a tour at the end, and I'd kind of like to know how many people are going to stay for the tour so I can decide whether to have 2 or 3 groups on the tour. So if you plan to stay on the tour, let me know. Hey, I was thinking of seeing if there's any questions, but I think it's better if when we go on the tour, you'll have lots of opportunity to ask Askewy in the Powell Gallery and Frank in the dark room and Tom and Gord with workshops. So I won't ask for questions now. And I know on Zoom at the end, after the presentations, Kathy will be able to help you with any questions the new members have. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora.
Okay, so I have already alluded to competitions earlier in the general overview of our club activities. Competitions in the club is a very major part of our program, and it is enjoyed by both the participants and just members watching the results of the competition, because looking at pictures critically is a sure way of improving your own photography. And if you are, if you actually participate, it will be even better because it will push you to another level. So competitions in camera clubs has a long history. As you have heard, the Salon, the International Salon, which is the international competition, has 128 years of history, and this we're going into our 129th year. We have a lot of competitions. I think our club holds more competition than anybody else in the O3C, the Ontario Council of Camera Clubs, which there are members of, maybe there are about 30 clubs which are members of this organization in Ontario. We hold the most competitions. Now, these are club competitions, which means it's internal. It's only for our own club members. And in addition to that, there's inter-club competition where we compete against other clubs in Ontario. We have countrywide competitions with CAPA, which is Canada-wide, and we have international competitions, which is a salon. Now, competitions is this is how I see the purpose of competition or of competing, because it's only by pushing yourself as to the best that you can do. That's the only way that you can actually improve, and you would learn as you're doing this, and hopefully you treat it as fun, and it's the best way to get involved in club activities and to be improving as a photographer. So the competition is not a way to if you are just trying to get a feedback to your picture, then competing in club competition may not be the best way. We have another way of improving your images, and that is by the image evaluation sessions, which I think we'll talk about later. So for competition, for the purpose of this, is that you want to have an objective evaluation of your picture and to compare your image against your fellow members or other photographers. And through this comparison, you can hopefully see how one image is better or stronger than another image, and you can hopefully strive to become better this way. Now, the competitions are scored, and I will tell you how the scoring works. But the scores is a way of reflecting what the judges feel is the strength or weaknesses of your image. And so by trying to achieve higher and higher scores will be another way of trying to improve. But the bottom line is that you have to take this with a grain of salt. You have to take it with a sense of humor sometimes. Not necessarily, that's not what I mean exactly, but I mean that you have to take it in a lighter way, because it's not the end of the world if you don't score well, and it doesn't mean that you are the best photographer even if you score very well. So you have to take it with a grain of salt, but the whole process of competing and really looking at your images critically will be a sure way of improving. So I want to, especially for new members, I want to distinguish between being in the beginner division or being a complete novice photographer. So although we have a beginner division, an advanced division, and a master's division, I think you have to be at least competent as a basic photographer in order to compete in the beginner's division. And so what does that mean? So that means that you have to have a decent camera, meaning that you have a camera that you can at least control and manipulate in terms of setting it to some sort of the aperture, the shutter speed, or the ISO. So you have to have a camera that has some ways for you to manipulate. You have to know how to manipulate these controls. And hopefully you have at least some knowledge of how to process the image that is produced by your camera. And what kind of software that might be. There's a number of possibilities. The most common one is either Lightroom made by Adobe, or Adobe Elements, which is a simple, a more basic form of Photoshop, or Photoshop itself. So I think these are the most common processing software. There may be other software available, but for comparing technique and to understanding some of the finer points, I think most lecturers or most workshops will focus on Lightroom or Photoshop, or maybe to a certain degree, Element. If you are not sure about whether you are ready for competition, the bottom line here on this slide shows the image evaluation. Now, this is fairly new. I've just started doing this last year. There are sessions for pictorial, there's sessions for nature, and there's sessions for creative. These are all going to be on Wednesdays from 7:30 to 9:30. So the first one coming up is next Wednesday at 7:30. The following Wednesday will be nature, and the one after that will be creative. You do have to send me your pictures directly, so it's not uploaded on the website. I think this Friday's newsletter, or if you check last Friday's newsletter, my email address should be on it. But to simplify it, it's christopher.sue@torontocameraclub.com. You can send me up to 4 images. Again, this is informal, it's not scored, and it's completely anonymous. Come and drop by anyway next Wednesday, even if you haven't submitted an image for me to evaluate, because it's a great learning experience just to see how images are evaluated, what are the strong points, what are the weaknesses, what to watch out for, and what to avoid. I'm going over some of that anyway tonight too. So this is the image evaluation. This is for someone who is not sure whether your image is good enough to enter competitions. You want to have at least something that is slightly stronger to enter competition to make it worthwhile, because otherwise you might be just disappointed because during the competition you may not get as much feedback as during these image evaluation sessions. You might be just given a score, which may not tell you very much about how you did. Okay, now please interrupt me at any point if you have any questions. Now, this is a very important slide because you have to know how to upload your image to the competition page in the website. And so, first of all, you have to be a member. If you're an active member, then you can log on to the membership section of the website, and you should be given. You should set up your own password and so on in order to log into the membership section. You go into the competitions menu, and then you will see the whole list of competitions. New this year, I think David, our webmaster, has already posted the upcoming deadlines for competition entries. So the first 2 are pictorial and nature. You can probably see it right when you log into the website. And so under the appropriate competition, you can see the competition number 1, because that would be the first one that's available for entry upload. You will see that you are allowed to enter up to 3 images. You upload those images with the appropriate size and so on. Now, mind you, this is the important point, and that is every time because you're allowed to enter 3 images, you have to enter all 3 images together. If you enter 1 at a time, it doesn't work, because if you enter 1, the second time you enter a second image, you automatically erase your first entry. So you end up with only still just 1 entry being your second picture. And if you enter a third time with a single image, that will be your only entry, because your first 2 entries will be erased. By the same token, you can enter all 3 together. And if you, on the last minute before the deadline, anytime before the deadline, you can submit again. You can submit all 3 images again after some making corrections maybe, or you can enter 3 completely different images. But every time you enter again, that entry will replace your previous one completely. So you can do this as long as it is before the deadline. So once the deadline is reached, then the entry is closed and you can no longer make any changes. Okay, so that's the important thing. And also the entry form will warn you if your dimensions is not correct. I don't know what other safeguard David has introduced this year, but typically in the past, a lot of members are confused by the dimension requirement of the entries. And I'll go over that next. Any questions? Any questions, you can shout it out, or if you're in the audience, maybe someone can tell me that there's a question on.
Chris?
Yeah.
It's Michael here.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding the evaluations, we had a question.
Mm-hmm.
How many days ahead of the evaluation session
Okay.
submit?
So for next Wednesday evaluation session, I want you to submit your entries to me by Sunday night. So this Sunday, in a few days' time, because I need some time to sort them out. I send them out to the panelists so that they have a chance to look them over, have some comments in their mind. So by Sunday, if you really can't make Sunday, let me know so that I know that there are more images coming. But definitely by Monday, no later than Monday, the evaluation is on Wednesday. Okay, so it's always the Sunday before the Wednesday for the deadline. If you want to enter some of the, well, send me some entries for nature or creative ahead of time, you can do that too. I will recognize that they're not pictorial images and I'll set them aside for the subsequent week's evaluation session. Okay, all right, so next is the requirement. Now, this first line is the most confusing because everybody will be asking, what is the DPI? What is the DPI starts per inch? Yeah, that's the most confusing part because the DPI only, it's only appropriate for printing if you're making a print because all your files are made up of pixels and depending on how densely you want to pack the pixels, you can have various file size with DPI that's very confusing. It's not the correct dimension. So the important thing to note is that the maximum file size is 1,400 pixels in the horizontal direction, and in the vertical direction is 1050 pixels. So this will roughly form an image that is somewhat square, something like a 5:4 ratio. Now, this is the maximum boundary of your image because it can be smaller, but it can not be any bigger. And so sometimes the confusion is that if you have an image and you rotate it into a portrait format as opposed to a landscape format, you may have exceeded the vertical dimension because those 1050 pixels vertically cannot be switched to 1,400 pixels if you're rotating your image. Now, I know that this is somewhat confusing and it may be a little bit difficult for someone to understand how this is done. I have asked Sherry to demonstrate on Lightroom next Wednesday how to resize your image if you need to know how to do that, and also to assign it the proper color space. It's not assigning you, generally you are converting your image to the color space of sRGB. Most of the time your camera will shoot in sRGB. More advanced photographers will be shooting with Adobe RGB, but for our purpose, you have to convert it to sRGB for it to show properly on everybody's screen. And also in the old days when we're projecting the image at the club, using sRGB will be a much more accurate and true reproduction of your image. If you use Adobe RGB, it will come out somewhat different, and you will be disappointed that it doesn't look like your image on your home screen. Every image needs a title. For all competitions, the title can be creative, can be anything. The only exception is nature titles. For nature competitions, the title is very bland. You just have to tell me exactly what your subject matter is. So if it is, let's say if it's an osprey, then it's an osprey. If it's a bald eagle, it's a bald eagle. So you don't need to create any other name for your image. If it is a prairie smoke flower, or if it's a yellow lady slipper, you will just name it appropriately. You just call it by the name. It's important to identify your subject for nature. Nature judges appreciate your identification. And if something special is happening, let's say there's pollination of a flower, or there's animal behavior, some animals feeding, animals mating, animals hunting, you can describe the behavior of the animal in the title. And I think that's always appreciated by the judges. And out of your 3 entries, you can only check off 1 requesting a comment. So you cannot request a comment on all 3 of your image. This is really to save some time when we're presenting the results. Sometimes judges will give comments even if not requested, but for sure, when you request a comment on one of your entries, you will receive comments from 1 or more of the judges on the panel. This is referring to the competition judging panel. Yeah, so only in nature and in assigned topics where there will be subcategories. You have to make sure you don't just enter them by default, because by default in nature, your entries will end up in the general category. And assign topics, you have to identify which topic, because otherwise you might be in a completely wrong topic with your images. And as a result, your image may be disqualified because it is not according to the topic. There are more details of this in the website. And again, this conversion, resizing, color space, and entry of your images will be demonstrated on Wednesday, next Wednesday at the evaluation session, the first evaluation session. And it can be repeated again if necessary later, but it's actually not that complicated. Once you've done it once, if you have some working knowledge of Lightroom, Photoshop, or Elements, it's not hard to do. But for those who need a little bit of help, we will demonstrate it next Wednesday. Okay, so next thing, and this is the important thing. How do you judge an image and how do you score? I remember when I first joined the club, that was the first question on my mind, because I'm thinking, now, how does this work? What does it mean? So this is how it works. At all judging sessions within the club, and even at almost every judging sort of panel in either the international salon, interclub competitions, Kappa competitions, they always have a panel of 3 judges. And the 3 judges in our system are accredited judges, which means that they have gone through proper training with experience. Their performance have been evaluated and analyzed, and they are known to be good judges. And they will give a score, each one of the 3 judges will give a score out of 10 on every image. The 10 points are based on 3 things: impact for 3 points, structure for 3 points, out of 3 points, and technical out of 3 points. And there's an extra bonus point called the judge's choice. Sometimes judges will give an extra point for either exceptional quality, exceptional nature story, something exceptional. So let's go over everything. In each subsection, so out of the 3 marks for impact, structure, and technical, it's broken down further like this. On a standard image, so what they consider to be good standard image, you get 2 out of those 3 points. So 2 points for impact. You can have 2 points if it's standard for structure, 2 points for technical. In half mark increments, you can have above average, substandard, or outstanding. So when you get outstanding, that means you get all 3 points. If it's substandard, you only get 1.5 marks. So this is what it looks like if you have the total score. So the breakdown may not be revealed, actually. The judges will give a score. So if you get a 6 for your point, marks for your image, that means it's a standard image. Most likely, in every respect, you have met the standard. So that's 6 points. If it's above average in every category, you get 7.5 points. If it is an outstanding image, which means you earn 3 marks, maximum 3 marks on every of those impact, structure, and technical, then you get 9 points. Rarely do you get 9 points. If you get 9 points for your 9 marks for your image, it's already outstanding. It will be among the winners. If you get under 6 points, that means there's usually some pretty obvious flaw. And this is where you want to avoid having these substandard image. And I will show you what are those flaws that would unfortunately earn you a substandard mark. Okay, so let's explain what the first part is, impact. So what is impact? So impact is the first thing that the judges would notice when they, well, in fact, you can determine that for yourself, because every time you see an image, the first thing that comes to your mind is the impact of that image. An image that has strong impact usually conveys a very strong, either a very strong mood, it has a very strong story, it has a very captivating subject, or it has very strong imagination. So I'll show a few samples. So an image usually with, this is a sunrise image taken in China. These are all my images, by the way, so you can take it however you will. I'm just using them as a sample. So usually a misty morning can convey a certain mood. This is a nature story with penguins feeding behavior of these chin-strap penguins. So it has a strong nature story. This Angkor Wat monk with good lighting, good face, eye-to-eye contact with the photographer has impact. So just a strong subject matter can have impact. And this close-up of the moose, my favorite subject, taken in Algonquin Park. It only took me 20 years to find a moose in Algonquin Park, believe it or not. And this was taken just last fall, last year's fall outing, where we went to Algonquin Park. So to me, it has a lot of impact because I've never seen a moose this close before. Now, so this is impact. And this is taken from the Bean in Chicago. Quite an abstract image, but if you've been there, you know what this is all about. A bit of looks like a creative image, but it's actually just a straight shot from the reflections of the Bean in Chicago. So sometimes images will grab your attention immediately, and that's what impact is. Unfortunately, sometimes this is still somewhat subjective because some judges may find some images more impactful than others. We try to be as objective as possible. Most impact images are generally considered to be impactful. So this is how judges are trained to recognize images that way, and they try to be as objective as possible. Now, impact is hard to define, but structure is slightly easier. Structure is a way of basically a composition, how you place all the elements in your picture in such a way that it's compelling and to show that you have some idea to organize the elements within that picture space. This is something that actually sets a better photographer apart from a less experienced photographer, because how you organize your elements in the picture takes a lot of practice. You have to recognize immediately when you come upon a scene or when you're constructing a scene on your at home or what have you, how to make those elements work well together. There are a few little tricks that is quite standard, and these tricks are generally used by most photographers. Usually it's a combination of tricks that they've learned over the years. And so these are placement, lead-in lines, depth, distract. I'm going to show some samples of that. So the first thing is called the rule of thirds. So the rule of thirds is generally meaning that you divide your picture frame into 2 lines vertically, 2 lines horizontally, both of these lines mostly dividing the picture frame into thirds. So where the lines intersect, generally speaking, if you place your main subject in those intersections, it generally works well. So I'm always using the word generally because you can see this image, the penguin is not exactly at the thirds. But the point here is not to place your main subject right in the middle. Usually placing it right in the middle doesn't work very, very well. Now, these are not hard and fast rules, but that's how generally most photographers, experienced ones, would automatically avoid placing the main subject in the center. So this is rule of thirds. And this is somewhat rule of thirds as well, because the herder of the camel is again not in the center. There are some lines here. If you break down your image into a graphic form, you can see a triangular sort of a pyramid shape formed by the sand dune in the foreground, with the camels going up this imaginary, well, it's quite an obvious line, and also the division of the picture space into thirds. So you have the sky at the top third, you have some background dunes in the middle third, and you have this triangular shape in the foreground, and there's some pattern in the sand. So dividing your picture space into segments and placing your subject not in the center is one of the key elements. And again, these looks like the reeds in Ralph Gross's pond, but this is not his pond. This was taken at one of the lakes near Kirkfield. So again, don't put the main subject in the center. placing them off to the side, simplify your composition. There's nothing else in the picture except for some reflections of the clouds and these grasses. A very typical design, which is to form like a circular pattern as it goes down, in this case, up this staircase. I think it's called it's in Chicago, a building, one of the first high-rises, skyscrapers in Chicago. This is a fairly well-known image or a very well-known spot. But a very typical design is to create these circular lines because it leads your eye into the center part, the brightest part of the image. And you have no distractions on the edge, and it keeps the viewers focused in the center. The last part is technical, and this is something that we should all avoid, because if avoid meaning that you don't want to make a mistake in this section, because this is where you sometimes get into trouble. The technical section is proper exposure, proper sharpness, which includes the depth of field, and I'll explain that in a little bit, and the proper shutter speed. These are all the controls that you can put into your camera. Most advanced photographers will know how to manipulate the cameras, or either in camera or in post-processing, to produce the proper exposure, the proper sharpness, the proper depth of field, and shutter speed. If you have a glaring error in exposure or sharpness or shutter speed, that will get you into trouble, because that's the most glaring mistake that you can make. If you make an image with a weak composition or a weak impact, that won't cost you very much. But if you have a weak, like an overexposed or underexposed image, a picture that lacks sharpness or depth of field or the proper shutter speed, then you may be somewhat penalized and you can end up with a substandard score. So with exposure, with the modern camera, you would expect that there's no way you can have an improper exposure. But the most common mistake with exposure is that you have to recognize that your camera's sensor, or the meter in your camera, is exposing for an average subject. If your subject is very contrasty, if it has very bright highlights and very dark shadow, your camera may, if you're relying on it just out of the camera, it may select an average exposure, which can either underexpose your dark areas or overexpose your light area. So even for a swan such as this, there are certain parts of the swan that is overexposed, and that is the very whitest part of the swan. You want to at least keep the whitest part, the brightest part, within what is called the histogram, within the parameters of your image, so that there is some detail shown either in both in the highlight and in the shadow area. That requires a little bit of practice. It may require a little bit of manipulation of your camera. It may require setting your camera, especially nowadays, the modern mirrorless cameras. You can set warning highlights to show you where you have highlight exposure that may be too bright, or shadow areas that are too dark. So you can correct it immediately, even as you take the picture. Or if you have what is called a DSLR, if you have other cameras that you can review your image, you can make immediate corrections, because you can take a look at it and see if there's some overexposed or underexposed areas. An underexposed area happens all the time too, because your camera's meter may be focused on the beautiful sunset in the background, and you end up with a foreground that's too dark. Some of this can be corrected in post-processing if you have the technique to do it, or you can make some corrections in camera, but this will be harder to do in camera because camera sensors have a certain dynamic range that you cannot really manipulate while you're taking a picture. But you can check your exposure and you will know whether you can correct it afterwards in post-processing. So a wrong exposure, typically an overexposed image, will get you into trouble. So another important point, very important point, is that you have to make sure that the monitor that you're using at home is properly calibrated. It means that you want to make sure that what you're seeing at home is what everybody else will be seeing. Now, you know that this can be very difficult to confirm because especially if you're using a laptop's brightness can be adjusted according to your working environment. If you're constantly outdoors, you might turn down the exposure or vice versa. If you're in a dark space, you might turn it up or vice versa. So you might be adjusting the brightness according to your working environment, which means that after you have adjusted your image according to your laptop, that exposure may be wrong when somebody else's monitor, somebody else's laptop is looking at it. The only way that you can make sure that what you're seeing is what everybody will be seeing is that you have to be able to calibrate your screen. There are special colorimeters that will help calibrate your screen. Some newer screens are automatically calibrated in the factory. So there are various ways to confirm that, but that's a very important point because sometimes you would say, well, how come my image looks completely different when we're showing the results on the big screen at the club, or when we're just projecting it, or when we're just looking at it at home. So, and that's because maybe your monitor is not calibrated properly. Lack of sharpness. Nowadays, all cameras have autofocus capability. You can obviously manually override it, but oftentimes your pictures may still not be sharp, especially if you moved. So if you're unable to hold your camera very steadily, if you don't have image stabilization either inside the camera or in the lens, you can have a properly focused picture, but still not sharp because you move slightly or your subject has moved slightly. So that's something that can happen with even the best of us, because when you focus on something, your focus might have been locked on that plane. And if your subject has just taken a step forward or moved back a little, if you're taking a picture of an animal, the animal has moved a little forward or backward, you can still end up with an unsharp image. An unsharp image is not good at all. So sharpness and exposure are the key elements to watch out for if you don't want to run into trouble with a substandard score. The last but not least is noise. Nowadays, it's less of a problem. There are lots of software that would correct for very noisy images. Noise is a digital artifact created by your sensor, especially if you're underexposing an image and you're trying to brighten it up in order to see what's happening in the shadow area. You will just introduce a lot of noise into your picture, which is like these very textured spots. This image is totally exaggerated. So this is what a terribly noisy picture would look like. It can also happen if you're taking a picture in a very dark place and you're using very high ISO in order to capture whatever you were trying to take a picture of. There are ways to minimize that nowadays, but first and foremost, you have to recognize the limits of your own particular camera. You have to recognize what is the limit of your camera's sensor and what ISO that you can set it to without incurring too much noise. Sometimes this happens even if you have a relatively low ISO, but you're taking a dark object that you need to open the shadows, and you can introduce noise into the shadow area. There's software that can help you correct that nowadays. Very powerful software, namely the Topaz Denoise AI. I just started using it. It's a godsend, actually. It can actually correct for movement, some degree of movement that you have that created unsharp images. So nowadays, there are ways to overcome some of these limits. So I want to show an image that shows a strong lead in line, which shows proper exposure in foreground, background, enough depth of field for both the what's immediately in front of the camera up to the very back side in the background, the mountains in the background. In order to have proper depth of field, you have to use a proper f-stop. Now that's a little bit more advanced for a novice or a beginning photographer, but that's where it comes in. You have to know what difference it makes when you use f4 versus f11, let's say. So f11 gives you more depth of field, f4 gives you less depth of field. Sometimes you want to have less, or sometimes you need to have more. You have to know what situation to use, what setting. And when you use a more depth of field, you have to learn how to focus properly, so to maximize your depth of field. When you're in a very close-up situation, such as this close-up of a grasshopper, there are now new technique available, which is called focus stacking, something much more advanced for beginner photographers. Whereas something like this would have been nearly impossible to take a few years ago, because there's just a limit to the depth of field that can be provided by just one setting on your lens alone. This focus stacking technique involves taking multiple pictures at various focus planes and combining a picture together to give you an increased depth of field. Something a little bit more advanced. But when you're shooting a macro image, you need to be sharp from front to back. You need to have everything sharp, such as this grasshopper, in order not to, again, get into trouble because your picture is not sharp enough. So you can have one part sharp, but if the whole insect is not sharp enough, then that can cost you marks. Then it comes to shutter speed. Shutter speed is when you want to freeze action. You want to have a very high shutter speed in order to freeze the action of this tennis player. And you want to have a relatively slow shutter speed if you want to pan and create the impression of movement. This is a technique that's a little bit harder because you have to be able to move your camera as this subject is coming through, and you have to follow it on a relatively slow shutter speed in order so that the background is blurred, but the cyclist or the motorcyclist is relatively sharp. One more sample, slowing down water, typically waterfalls. You have to select the right shutter speed so as to still keep some detail in the waterfall without blurring it completely until it looks like cotton wool. It requires a little bit of, you can just do trial and error. I find that generally to have some blurring of the water and not blurring it out completely means a shutter speed of around 1/6 of a second. You can play around that particular setting, plus or minus a bit, depending on how far you're away from your water. So anyway, this is samples of controlling shutter speed to create the effect that you want. Okay, we're almost at the end of my presentation. So there I have shown some samples of impact, structure, and exposure. The extra point is usually awarded. Sometimes judges find that the impact is so powerful, or the mood is so powerful, or the story is so strong that they will award this extra point. We always hear about capturing the decisive moment, and that's what it's all about. Sometimes even for fairly like a landscape image, which you would expect that, nothing is moving, but the lighting is constantly changing. If you've ever taken a picture at sunrise or sunset, you know that by the minute the light is changing. And so being able to capture the landscape or the action at the prime moment requires a bit of preparation and a bit of timing. So I have a few pictures that I have selected from my own portfolio that I'm particularly fond of. A couple of children in China. This is the canoe at Chicken-Ishing. This is the Chicken-Ishing shot. I got there a little bit late. The canoeist has just came out of the canoe, and I quickly shot this picture because you can see the sun is just rising behind, from the side. If you remember that morning setting, this was taken about 10 years ago, but still one of my favorite pictures from Chicken-Ishing. This is a picture of a baby Gentoo penguin nestling underneath the parent's protective wings. And this is a picture taken in the Dolomites. One of my favorite shots, although this is a relatively easy shot because it was not taken particularly at the morning or like early morning or late in the evening. But I just thought the setting is beautiful, the lines converging to the village. This is a village of St. Peter's in the Dolomites in northern Italy. Okay, I think that is the end of my presentation. I want to, again, let everybody know that entering competition is a lot of fun. It's really the best way to learn, but it's just like, I'll use the analogy of playing tennis. If you're a tennis player, you just hitting the ball back and forth will not make you a better player. You probably have to play a game against an opponent in order to learn the nuances of the game and to how to strategize. And until you know how to play a proper game against an opponent, that's when you're ready to enter a friendly competition within our club. If you want to really get better, then you enter international competitions, which means that you're going to enter a real tournament playing against other qualified members, which is at a much higher level. But just like a tennis game, winning a match does not mean that you will win against everybody else, because every opponent is slightly different. And the same goes for the competitions. Every competition is a comparison of your work against the other competitors, the other entries in that particular competition. And it also depends somewhat on the three judges and how they see your image, which means that sometimes a low scoring image, relatively low scoring image, can still be a winning image in another setting, in another competition, when it's judged by another set of judges. So in the end, the competition is a comparison. It's something that is kind of fun because it pushes you to work harder and gives you a chance to reflect on your work more objectively and look at other entries, which may be similar, may have a similar theme as yours, and you can compare your work with them. It's a great way to learn, and it's a great way to, so I always say that you look at the images, you learn, and you create your own work.